Samuel and I were reborn at the same time. He, as in our past life, came to marry me with full hopes and dreams. I, however, rejected him. Samuel was stunned. Why? We were married for 50 years, and we lived happily together. I shook my head coldly. Being called Mrs. Song for a lifetime. I want my own name. Samuel Song didn't understand, thinking I was throwing a tantrum. Without me, what could you possibly do? Even sweeping the streets. You wouldn't be able to get the job. He waited for me to regret it. Years went by, and he watched helplessly as I stood on top of the world. I became someone he could never reach again. Chapter 1. The day Samuel was appointed as an honorary professor at the university happened to be our 50th wedding anniversary. Our two sons organized a lively celebration at home. During the banquet, a young female reporter came over to interview me. Mrs. Song, if there's an afterlife, would you still marry Professor Song? She was in her early 20s, with a radiant expression, her doe-like eyes scanning both me and Samuel's wedding rings, filled with a longing for love. I understood what she meant. Samuel and I, Song, are well known as a loving couple, and the media has reported on us several times. We were college classmates, sent to the countryside as educated youth, and we stayed in the same rural area, never parting ways, hand in hand through 6 decades of life's trials. I raised our 2 children, managed the household, and took care of Samuel's sick mother. Samuel devoted himself to his career, rising from a poor, unknown student to a prestigious professor, joining the Social Science Academy, and earning numerous honors. The typical model of a man being the breadwinner while the woman manages the home. Everyone thought I was very fortunate. My husband had a successful career, and our 2 sons graduated from top universities, with good jobs and promising futures. But no one knew that behind the shiny exterior, there was a woman who spent her life unseen. These years, I haven't been happy. I opened my mouth to speak, but before I could say anything, Samuel, holding a wine glass, squeezed over and forcefully interrupted me. Of course, she's had a life of luxury. Our 2 sons also joined in teasing. If my mom could marry my dad, it must have been the result of burning a lot of incense to pray for it. My grandfather always said their family's ancestral tomb was smoking with good fortune. If there's an afterlife, my mom definitely won't let my dad get away. Samuel pulled at the corners of his mouth, the wrinkles at the edges of his eyes pressing together, revealing a spoiled smile. Can't escape. Your mom's persistence is quite something. The female reporter's eyes brightened, and she exclaimed in surprise. Professor Song, from what you're saying, it seems like Mrs. Song was the one who pursued you? It was I who pursued Samuel. This had been reported by the media before, and the reporter, having done her research, couldn't possibly have missed it. When Samuel heard her question, he proudly pursed his lips and repeated the well-worn story he had told hundreds of times before. I took the initiative to bring him meals, wash his clothes. When he was sick, I took the initiative to help with farm work. This relationship was initiated by me, so Samuel always stood above me, expecting me to serve him for life. It was what I deserved. The female reporter giggled and sighed. The love from that era, Mrs. Song. You were really brave. Chapter 2. The word brave sounded unexpectedly harsh in my ears. Since marrying Samuel, I've had nothing to do with that word. My mother-in-law is a shrewd and domineering woman. We all lived together under one roof, and every habit regarding food, clothing, and living had to be according to her way, from the arrangement of the furniture to the pillows and bed covers in the room, and even the fabric I chose to make clothes. I had no say in any of it. This indigo fabric is old-fashioned and ugly. Wear that blue one tomorrow. I've placed it on the bedside table for you. This bedside lamp. Why did you move it from the nightstand to the chest of drawers? I keep hitting it with my hand at night. I'm afraid I'll break it. Well, just be careful. It's still better on the nightstand. More convenient when you get up at night. She moved the lamp back to the nightstand, squinting her narrow eyes and scanning the room. She opened the wardrobe and, according to her habits, rearranged the clothes. Your pants should not be placed on top of Samuel's. A woman can't be above her man, can she? Diana, I'm not criticizing you, but you're too careless. At first, I wasn't used to it and protested to Samuel, but he frowned and looked at me in surprise. Mom is just looking out for us. Can't you let her be? Mom's older, and she knows the household better than you. Just listen to her. In those days, conservative thoughts prevailed, and I didn't dare to oppose my mother-in-law, so I gave in. For all these years, I've endured my mother-in-law's dominance, Samuel's criticism, my son's mischievousness, and my daughter-in-law's defiance. I've given in my whole life, in my small world, step by step. I've endured, step by step. I've retreated. Eventually, I shrank into a corner, living only as a shell of a person. They still called this enjoying life, facing the longing and envy in the eyes of the young female reporter. I really couldn't bear to let her live in a false fantasy. Chapter 3. I wouldn't. I raised my voice, shaking my head firmly. I wouldn't marry Samuel again, being called Mrs. Song my whole life. If I could live again, I'd want my own name. The lively banquet hall fell silent in an instant. People turned around in shock, the female reporter wide-eyed, clearly not expecting this answer. The smile on Samuel's face froze. He sighed helplessly, shrugged, and tightened his grip on my hand. This old lady, she had a little spat with me yesterday, and now she's sulking. Look at you. How old are you? Everyone burst into laughter, and the atmosphere lightened again. Our two sons shook their heads and complained. My mom has that kind of temper. It's all because Dad spoils her. Mom, there are so many people here. Can you give Dad some face? Our younger son shrugged. Mom's spoiled by Dad. Everyone praised how much Song and his wife loved each other, even teasing like a young couple. Samuel pulled me into the quiet study, closed the door behind us, and his face, which had been full of smiles moments ago, instantly darkened. Diana, what do you mean? Deliberately sulking with me? He turned his head to glance at the glass door and lowered his voice. Is it because of what I asked you to do for Ellie the other day? Look at her. She's married now. We don't really have anything between us. Can't you just be magnanimous? Ellie was Samuel's student. She was infatuated with her professor's vast knowledge and elegant demeanor and had once fervently pursued him. Samuel, however, was torn. He went to the movies with Ellie, ate with her every day in the cafeteria, tirelessly helped her with her coursework, even adding her name to his own long-prepared paper. But that was it. Samuel had a scale in his heart. 2 sons, a wife he'd been with for most of his life, a stable family, a decent job, and reputation. He could distinguish what mattered more. When things were becoming increasingly hard to handle, he coldly rejected Ellie and invited her to our home as a guest. Watching him tie my apron in the kitchen, Ellie cried as she rushed out of our house. Later, she transferred to another school at lightning speed, disappearing completely from our lives. Until last year, when Ellie's husband transferred to a position at Samuel's university, they resumed contact. And after all this time, they tacitly agreed not to mention the past. Ellie and her husband visited our home, and during the meal, they talked about the past. Ellie laughed, saying, "The ribs noodles that Mrs. Song made were really delicious. I used to sneak lunch from the professor, and I still can't forget it. What's the big deal?" Samuel waved his hand. Diana, go make her a bowl of noodles. Chapter 4. There was nothing really wrong between them at first, and our son was still young. Samuel came home and told me that the female student had been pestering him, asking me to help get rid of her. So, I didn't really make a fuss about it, but that doesn't mean I was magnanimous enough to cook for her. Samuel reached out and held my shoulder. I knew it was about this. In the end, you refused to do it, pretending to have a headache. But I didn't say anything, did I? I didn't argue with you. Yet you're throwing a tantrum. Samuel sighed. Like Berlin said, you really have been spoiled by me. Even in front of all those people, you couldn't give me any face. After a while, our younger son quietly entered the study, complaining to me, "Mom, the older you get, the more childish you become. Throwing a tantrum has its time and place. How can Dad keep his dignity with you saying things like that? Later, go out and smooth things over. Just say." Watching my son babbling at me, I started to feel a bit absent-minded. In the blink of an eye, Berlin had grown up. From the little boy who clung to me every moment, he had grown into a man with a family and career. He had his own business, his own thoughts. He no longer called me mom the way he used to. I love mom. Mom is the best mom in the world. I'll buy her the best things in the world someday. I don't know when he started saying otherwise. Mom is just a useless housewife. A job? Oh, that's just something the school gave her because of my dad's status. It's just a part-time job. My dad is the real powerhouse. Did mom raise us well? That's just because of our good genes. Our brains are smart. We take after my dad. My dad works the hardest. Mom just enjoys life. So, mom's thoughts don't matter at all. Chapter 5. I felt very disappointed and didn't want to continue agreeing with my son. I'm not throwing a tantrum. I raised my voice, repeating each word clearly. If I could do it over, I would want to live on my own. Berlin didn't understand. Why? Dad treats you so well. As I said before, I want my own name, my own career. Berlin scoffed. Your own career? Mom, what can you even do? You can't even make a pancake without burning it. Samuel shook his head as well. You're just talking big. Without me, what would you do? Sweep the streets? The father and son exchanged a look and shared a tacit laugh. Berlin patted Samuel on the shoulder. They say the older you get, the more childish you become. Just look at mom. Samuel pulled at the corners of his mouth. Yeah, old lady. Not as sharp as she used to be. Our family was respectable, and we wouldn't argue in public. So this matter was quickly brushed aside. Later that evening, after the party was over and everyone had left, Samuel finished his shower and, as usual, lay in bed reading. After reading a few pages, he suddenly put the book down. Diana, about today. Are you serious? You really don't want to live with me anymore? I shook my head again. Samuel froze, his eyes flickering slightly. After a moment, he gently stroked the back of my hand, which was covered in wrinkles. I made a mistake, but you've known me for all these years. Diana, you know I've only ever cared about you. That thing was my fault. We're both old now. Let's bury it, okay? Samuel rarely admits his mistakes, and he was only willing to do so in this instance. Once he admitted his fault, I had no choice but to accept it, or else it would make me seem ungrateful. But this time, I didn't want to tolerate him anymore. It has nothing to do with that. I just want to live on my own, in peace. Samuel was furious. What's wrong with me? Am I not good enough for you? When you go out, everyone respects you as Mrs. Song. What more do you want? I don't want anyone calling me Mrs. Song. I have a name. I'm Diana. I couldn't help but raise my voice. I don't want to be your accessory. Samuel paused for a moment, stunned. Then, with a look of disbelief, he said, I get it. You're jealous of me? You see me as an honorary professor. Are you envious? As he spoke, he began laughing loudly, clutching his stomach. You, a housewife who cooks meals, want to be a professor? What's with this attitude of yours today? All right, enough with the nonsense. I know you so well, you're afraid of even a mouse. Without me, you wouldn't be able to accomplish anything. Samuel concluded with a smile. If we could do it all over again and you didn't choose me, you'd definitely suffer. With your intelligence, you couldn't even handle household chores. And you want to be a professor? Only I can spoil you. Don't be ungrateful. I couldn't accept this. You always say I'm stupid. But have you forgotten? We were college classmates. I was one of the first female college students of our generation. How could I be stupid? Samuel scoffed in disdain. You were just lucky. Like a blind cat stumbling upon a dead mouse. If you hadn't been sent to the countryside after 1 year, with your half-baked knowledge, you wouldn't even have gotten your degree. All right. I'm too lazy to argue with you over these pointless things. Let's just sleep. Chapter 6. Samuel turned off the lights. I was plunged into darkness. He always said I was stupid. I'm from the South, and I'm not good with my hands. I can't pickle cabbage, and I can't even cook on the stove properly. My mother-in-law said that a foolish daughter-in-law like me could only marry into their family. In another family, with a bad temper, they would have kicked me out long ago. Samuel would smooth things over, saying that a fool has good fortune. The more he said it, the more it seemed to become an accepted fact. When the kids got into prestigious schools, they would always say, their intelligence comes from dad. If they were like mom, they'd be doomed. I didn't understand how I had ended up this way. I was the first female university student in our village. When I received the acceptance letter, I felt like the whole world was at my feet. I was full of pride. How did I become such a mediocre and helpless housewife? In the darkness, I quietly shed tears. Like countless other ordinary nights, I sat in silence until late, lost in memories of the past and endless regrets, until I noticed a faint light in the distance. It was almost dawn. I should get up and make breakfast. Today, the two sons would bring their children to visit. My grandson loves the buns I make, and my granddaughter likes the century egg porridge I make. My daughter-in-law, studying abroad, loves sandwiches, and Samuel likes hand-pulled noodles. Everyone has different tastes, and I'd be busy for a while. I pulled the blanket off and sat up. A strange yet familiar figure suddenly barged into the room. Oi, what time is it? Samuel was coughing all night. How can you still be sleeping? Get up quickly. Today you've got to help with his work points. A middle-aged woman in a red floral coat, her black hair tied up in a bun, with a rosy, full face and slender eyes, entered. She was holding a wooden basin filled with dirty clothes piled high. Just wash these clothes for me. I've got too much to do in the field and can't manage. Chapter 7. I stared at the unfamiliar yet vaguely familiar face for a long time, my heart sinking in shock. Mother-in-law? She had passed away over 10 years ago, and after she left, I lived a few years of somewhat easier life. How could I be seeing her again? I looked around. A rough, mud brick house, a wooden table with a missing leg, and windows covered with dusty newspapers. This was the stone village from the 1970s? Realizing I had somehow returned to the past, I sat frozen on the bed, a mix of emotions filling my heart. My mother-in-law saw me sitting there without moving and came over to push me. What are you sitting there for? You were always a fool when you were young. I never understood what my son saw in you. She impatiently urged me. Hurry up. Wash the clothes first. Then come to the field to find me. With that, she hurriedly left. I followed her in a daze. Stumbling out of the room, not far outside, there was a water well. A few young women, their heads wrapped in scarves, were squatting by the well washing clothes. They pounded with sticks and chatted loudly. Did Samuel get sick again? A city-born educated youth. His body's precious. Precious? He's been down here for 7 years. Hasn't adapted yet. Poor Diana. That silly girl. Has to do all the work for his family. Poor? Don't say that. Look at Samuel. He's handsome, well-educated, and if his mother wasn't so unreasonable, I would send my daughter to wash his clothes. I stopped in my tracks. 7 years? I went to the countryside when I was 19, and I married Samuel when I was 27. If it's the 7th year since I went to the countryside, then Samuel and I aren't married yet? And his mother can give me orders like this? Chapter 8. I tried to recall, but the years had passed, and my memory wasn't very clear. It had been so hard to get from the barren countryside to university, and just after my first year, a special time came, and all university students were sent to the countryside to support rural construction. Samuel and I were assigned to a village called Stone Village in Shaanxi. Samuel was lucky because this village happened to be his mother's hometown. His father passed away early, and when his mother saw her son returning to her old home, she quickly packed up and followed him, with 3 uncles in the village looking after him. Samuel's life was much easier than the other educated youth. At first, I didn't plan to marry him. I still wanted to go back to my studies. Back then, I faced the ridicule and disapproval of everyone. Every day, after finishing the laundry, I'd light an oil lamp and sit by the stove reading. My mother, after quarreling with my father, then with my grandmother, like a hen protecting its chicks, would fight everyone just to protect my unrealistic dreams. The day I received my admission notice, she was so happy that she cried. She read the notice over and over, pressing it under the frosted glass on the nightstand. I knew our child would amount to something. You got into university. You'll become a city person and eat a public salary. No more working the land. No one expected that after all the efforts, I would just go from a rural area in the south to the north. I was still working the land, still doing farm work. As the sun rose and set, I would lift my head from the yellow earth, staring at the rough palms of my hands, and suddenly realize that the formulas and poetry I had once memorized had become as distant and blurry as the moon reflected in water. The university life I had dreamed of felt like a distant dream. At that time, everyone thought they couldn't go back. The walls were covered with slogans and signs, calling for turning the desolate southern mud into a northern oasis. If it wasn't completed, how could anyone return? It wasn't something a single generation could accomplish. I began to accept fate and face reality. In the village, I found Samuel to be more tolerable than others. We got along well, and so I approached him, flattered him, and eventually, I married him. I didn't expect that just 1 year after our marriage, the policy suddenly changed, and all of us educated youth were allowed to return to the city and even had jobs arranged for us. But with too many people and not enough jobs, the first batch of positions was highly competitive, and we had to wait in line. I had a chance, too. Coincidentally, at that time, I was pregnant, and the colleagues in the office looked at me awkwardly. Diana, this position is very tough. You'll have to go to the workshop every day and work until midnight. You'll also have to climb high iron racks. Given your condition, it's not suitable for you. Wait for the next batch, and I'll arrange an easier one for you. By the time the next batch came, my eldest son had been born. My usually healthy mother-in-law suddenly developed a headache, unable to touch cold water or handle noise. I had to take care of the child myself and gave up the opportunity again. Then, I had a second son. 2 noisy boys drained all my energy, and I couldn't muster any more ambition. When they got older and I sent them to daycare, my mother-in-law suddenly had a stroke. In that era, it was impossible to hire a nanny. People would gossip and slander you, calling you a landlord's wife, a reactionary. I was the one who had to take care of her. Those years were filled with buying groceries, cooking, washing clothes, getting medicine, wiping my mother-in-law's body, picking up the kids from school, supervising their homework, cleaning up the chaotic house, and getting them washed and into bed by midnight. The days mechanically repeated, and when I finally woke up, I saw a stranger in the mirror. Half-gray hair, deep wrinkles at the corners of my eyes, my face no longer youthful, my hollow eyes full of exhaustion and numbness. I had suddenly aged. How had time passed so quickly? It felt like I had done so much, yet at the same time, I had done nothing. This pale and hollow life of mine, I had become someone's daughter-in-law, someone's wife, someone's mother, but never truly myself. As Samuel's song's status rose higher, I sank further into obscurity, with no name of my own. Everyone called me Mrs. Song. But what about Diana? Chapter 9. Diana. Diana! The heavy sticks landed hard on the dirty, indistinguishable colored cloth, hitting it with a thud. Water splashed onto my shoes. Rita's sister winked at me. What are you standing there for? Come and help wash the clothes. I saw Samuel's mom brought you a big basin. Hurry up. If you don't grab the chance, you won't finish washing. The osmanthus flower sister beside him curled her lips. She really dares to do this. Not even married yet, and already bossing people around. Diana, I'm not saying this to hurt your feelings, but you have such a good temper. You're going to suffer when you marry into that family. We should stand tall, show some dignity. Another older woman nearby chuckled. A 30-year-old old maid still acting all high and mighty. If anyone wants her, that's already a blessing. Don't talk about washing clothes. If they asked her to wash their underwear, she'd rush to do it. I stared at her for a moment, remembering she was Bubba's mother. A few years ago, she had asked a matchmaker to introduce me to him, but I refused. She held a grudge, seizing every opportunity to speak ill of me. I smiled at her. Whoever wants to wash can wash. I don't have the time for it. With that, I grabbed a hoe, lifted my head high, and walked past the well toward the collective farmland to the north. Women froze for a moment and then spat loudly. Pa, acting all tough. Just wait till Samuel's mom gets angry. You'll regret it then. Samuel's mom was in the field, working hard with a hoe. When she saw me come so early, She paused in surprise, wiped the sweat from her brow with her scarf. Did you finish the laundry already? Are you washing it properly? Did you use a stick? Those mud stains need to be scrubbed clean. It's not that I'm criticizing you, Diana, but you need to work more carefully. Why are you always so careless? The others in the field continued their work but were all eavesdropping, casting gossiping glances in our direction. Under everyone's gaze, I carried the hoe and walked toward the field that I was responsible for. Samuel's mom, work with your own hands, and you'll be able to feed yourself. From now on, you can do your own work. My energy is for building Stone Village, not for being your Song family's servant. Chapter 10. In those days, there was no room for rebuttal in the sayings of the era. When Samuel's mom heard me say this, her face instantly turned red. She angrily stammered a few times and then slapped her thigh, shouting, "You don't want to marry Samuel anymore? My son is sick, and you're his future wife. What's wrong with helping him out? Don't you go throwing accusations at me. Our Song family doesn't want a lazy daughter-in-law," Samuel's mom shouted loudly, and the villagers, upon hearing it, began coming over to persuade me. They said her temper was just like that. But I had to live with Samuel, so I shouldn't argue with my mother-in-law. I sneered. Mother-in-law? Samuel and I are clean and innocent. What right does she have to be called my mother-in-law? Now that everyone's here, I'll set the record straight. Samuel and I only share a friendship as comrades in the revolution. I will never marry him. This statement stunned everyone. In the 60s and 70s, while arranged marriages were still the norm, free love had started to take root. Especially in the construction bases where there were many young people. Everyone knew that Samuel and I were in a relationship. Samuel's mom had already arranged for a matchmaker and set a date for after the new year to marry me off to Samuel. Now, hearing me flatly deny it, everyone felt something was off. Some people tried to persuade me, saying it was normal for young couples to have disagreements. But I couldn't speak out like this in front of everyone. Samuel was well liked in the village, and if I really pushed him away, I'd regret it later. Samuel's mom was seething, stomping her feet. I haven't even complained about you yet. And now you're being picky. My son will amount to something big in the future, and countless city girls will be scrambling to marry him. What right do you have to say you won't marry him? We don't even want to marry you. Her temper was always fiery, and when she got really angry, she slammed her leg and spewed out every harsh word imaginable. Seeing things escalating, a few busybodies ran off to find Samuel. Fine. If you don't want to marry him, neither do I. From now on, don't bring up my relationship with Samuel. After saying this, I turned around and saw Samuel standing at the edge of the field. His youthful, energetic face and eyes were full of familiar, indulgent affection. The next second, that smile froze on his face. Samuel's complexion turned pale, and he staggered back a step. Diana, are you still angry with me? Chapter 11. Seeing his expression, I knew Samuel was also reborn. Having spent 50 years together, we were too familiar with each other. His posture, his movements, his gaze, and the scholarly aura that had developed from a life of privilege, untouched by dust. As his student once put it, Professor Song looks distinguished. But Mrs. Song is different. I saw her bargaining at the market the other day. So vulgar. Samuel was handsome, and his temperament was even more refined. Standing in a green military uniform at the edge of the field, he was like a pine tree, so striking that no one could take their eyes off him. The crowd whispered, "Why does Samuel seem different today?" I think so too. He looks especially handsome today. No wonder Diana is so eager. She didn't rush him. Didn't she say earlier that she didn't want to marry Samuel? Probably just bragging. She's throwing a tantrum now, but with Samuel's mom's temper, she'll probably have to kneel to beg for him back. Once the sons arrived, Samuel's mom had more confidence, and her attitude became even more arrogant. Diana, my son Samuel is right here. Do you have the guts to say those things in front of him again? I lowered my head, vigorously swinging the hoe. The hard soil mixed with broken ice was turned over, and my words, sharp like ice shavings, pierced Samuel's heart. I, Diana, will never marry Samuel again. I didn't look at him again. Then I heard Samuel cough loudly, and his mother rushed over to help him up. The crowd scrambled to pull Samuel back into the house, and the noise gradually faded. I finished my work in the fields, watching Accountant Mao record my work points. Accountant Mao joked with me. "What's up with you? Suddenly not with Samuel anymore? It's not because you can't bear the work points, is it?" He flipped through the ledger and sighed. Samuel was sick for 10 days this month, but his work points are still full. But me? I only had half, and I was afraid I wouldn't even be able to fill my stomach. A thought crossed my mind. Mao, the work points are only settled at the end of the month. Can I transfer the points I've already earned for Samuel back to myself? Accountant Mao looked surprised. Wow, your conflict is pretty big. Huh? Are you serious? Yes. I won't help him with his work anymore. Hearing my firm answer, Accountant Mao hesitated for a moment, then nodded in agreement. All right. Others might fear the Tony brothers, but I'm not afraid. I'll back you up on this. If Samuel's mom disagrees, let her come talk to me. The Tony brothers were Samuel's uncles, all tall and imposing, with some influence in the village. However, people from this era were generally simple-minded. They might take small advantages but wouldn't make things difficult when it really mattered. With his confirmation, I breathed a deep sigh of relief. Being able to fill my stomach was the top priority in this era. Chapter 12. After a long day of work, I returned home, and as expected, Samuel was waiting for me at the door. He clenched his fist, scanning the surroundings cautiously. There were too many people just now. It was inconvenient to talk. Diana, should we go inside and talk? I nodded. Samuel followed me in through the door, coughed a few times, and instructed me in a familiar tone. Pour me a glass of water. I stood there without moving. Samuel paused for a moment, then chuckled bitterly. You're also reborn, aren't you? I could tell the moment I saw you just now. You were such a good-natured person when you were young. You're not like this now. I spoiled you too much. How long are you going to be this willful? I frowned as I listened. Samuel, I've told you several times already. I'm not throwing a tantrum. I want to live my own life. I want to work. I want to continue my academic research. I don't want to be stuck at home, having kids, taking care of your mother. Don't you understand? Samuel sneered when he saw my displeasure. He quickly zipped his lips and raised his hands in surrender. You've just gotten used to the good life. You think work is that easy? Is doing academic research that relaxing? You can't even cook a pancake without burning it. You forget what vegetables I asked you to buy. And yet you still think you can. I interrupted Samuel. If you keep talking nonsense, get out. Samuel sighed. You're like a child. Impossible to reason with. Fine. If you want to work so badly, go work for 2 years. Then, you'll come back crying to me, impatient. I pushed him away. I have nothing to say to you. Go out. I want to read. Samuel grabbed my wrist and smiled. Diana, I almost forgot what you looked like when you were young. Let me take a good look again. Under the dim light, his eyes were as gentle as ever, still filled with the affection of old times. My heart skipped a few beats. Chapter 13. After all these years of marriage, to say that I have no feelings for Samuel would be a lie. It was these tender moments that helped me survive year after year in this dull, monotonous marriage. Whenever something upset me, just seeing Samuel's face would calm me down significantly. But this is also where we're most different. When there were conflicts, Samuel would calm me down. I would back down, and life would return to peacefulness. Samuel, however, never seemed to back down for me. He would say sweet words, wear a soft expression, but what he handed me was always a knife wrapped in velvet. Listen to your mom. Go apologize to him. This money must be lent to my brother. Just do it for me, okay? Poison coated in sugar, a knife hidden beneath a ribbon, one cut after another, shaving off my edges, dulling my self-respect. I thought that was love. It wasn't until later, after living a lifetime, that I saw clearly it was just a man using means to achieve his goals. Looking at Samuel's face, drawing closer to mine, I took a deep breath, then slapped him across the cheek. Are you being a bully? Get out. I pushed Samuel out the door and slammed it shut. Samuel has a very strong sense of pride. After all these years of marriage, Even when we argued, I never raised my voice at him, just spoke with a slightly urgent tone. I never hit him, but after I slapped him, he was furious and didn't show up in front of me for several days. I finally got some peace. I worked on time every day, and at night, I read by the oil lamp, the textbooks from my university days. I flipped through them again and again. A young mind is truly useful within a few reads. I could memorize them. I was not the idiot that Samuel always made me out to be, incapable of doing anything. I felt a surge of joy in my heart and grew even more eager to return to life in Beijing. Until the end of the month, that calm was shattered. Chapter 14. Samuel's mother stormed into my house. I was reading by the light when she suddenly grabbed the book from my hands and scolded. "You heartless woman, you took away Samuel's work points. What is he supposed to eat? He's been so good to you, and you don't even care about his health. Do you really not want to marry him?" I coldly responded. "I've told you many times, I have nothing to do with him, and please don't come here to disturb me in the future." Samuel's mother trembled with anger, her finger almost poking my nose. "Diana, are you crazy? Have you thought about Cashin and Berlin? If you don't marry Samuel, how are you going to get pregnant next year? How will Cashin come into this world?" I froze. "You've been reborn too? No wonder." I vaguely remembered that before I married Samuel, his mother was somewhat polite to me. She didn't give me orders like this, expecting me to do things just because she was my future mother-in-law. Samuel's mother nodded furiously. "Yes, I have memories from my past life too. To be honest, I've never thought highly of you. With my son Samuel being so successful, what kind of daughter-in-law wouldn't I be able to find? But because of the two grandsons, I agreed to let him marry you. And now look at you. You've started acting all high and mighty, turning down a big professor like my son. Who do you even want to marry?" "I don't want to marry anyone. I want to go back to Beijing and continue working." I repeated the same words several times, my patience running out. "Can't Samuel find another wife? Can you all stop bothering me?" Seeing my firm attitude, Samuel's mother's eyes flickered, and her tone softened. "Are you mad at me for not taking Cashin back then?" My headache was real, not an act. "If you really want to work, fine, but get married first. Have the baby, and once my health is better, I'll help take care of the child." I pointed toward the door. "Leave now, or I'll call someone." "You think you can be so tough?" Seeing that I wouldn't budge, Samuel's mother swore at me angrily before leaving in a huff. Chapter 15. Since that day, I haven't done a single thing for Samuel. I earned my own work points and took care of my own meals. Samuel's mother scolded me several times, but after Samuel stopped her, she would only roll her eyes when she saw me and gossip about me with the village women. Samuel, on the other hand, tried to talk to me many times, but whenever he was met with my cold expression, his smile turned from bitter to increasingly impatient. "You really have no sense when you're throwing a tantrum, Diana. Even my patience has limits. You better not regret it." I couldn't even be bothered to respond to him. Half a year passed in the blink of an eye. Soon, I received the notice from Beijing. The educated youth from the countryside could finally return to the city. This time, my work opportunity was placed behind Samuel's. Just like in the previous life, he chose an easy job and became a teacher at a high school. I, on the other hand, was assigned to a chemical factory, to the hardest and most exhausting work in the workshop. Samuel furrowed his brows. "Director Wu, this isn't appropriate, right? She's a woman, and the workshop smells terrible. Why send her to work in the grassroots? Can you find something less strenuous?" Samuel had been a professor for so long that he still used an authoritative tone, and Director Wu immediately became displeased. "Hey, do you think this is your family? What job do you think you can just decide? Are you the mayor or the party secretary? There are plenty of people behind you. If you don't want it, someone else will take it." I quickly interrupted. "Director Wu, I'm willing to take this job. Don't listen to him." Before I could finish, Samuel dragged me out of the office. "Diana, there should be a limit to your nonsense." Samuel had a stern expression, scolding me just like before. "The workshop in the chemical factory is bad for your health. Don't you want to get pregnant in the next few years? Cashin is still waiting for us." Pregnancy. Cashin, this time. I completely lost my patience. Samuel, are you crazy? I've told you. I'm not going to marry you. There's no Cashin, no Berlin, just me. Do you not understand what I'm saying? Samuel exploded in anger. For this whole year, I've been tolerating you again and again. You wanted to work. I agreed. But you can't be so selfish. Are you telling me you don't even want a child anymore? What do you actually want? What do I want? I just want to be myself. Looking at Samuel, whose face was twisted with anger, I only felt a deep sense of helplessness rising from the pit of my stomach. Samuel always said that a husband's glory and a son's future were my crown, but I knew very well that they weren't mine. They belonged to them, and I actually had nothing. Since the moment I got married, I had crumbled into the dirt, becoming their nourishment. They sucked my blood, took all my time and energy, and bloomed into brilliant flowers. Everyone only saw the flowers. Who would care about the soil? Occasionally, someone would compliment. This soil nourishes. Was I supposed to be grateful for that? Originally, I could have been the one to bloom. Chapter 16. Samuel continued to rant in my ear, accusing me of being selfish and heartless. I could only raise my hand. Don't force me to slap you in public. Samuel was stunned and finally shut up. I got the job I wanted, and from then on, he remained respectable, playing the role of a teacher. I, on the other hand, became a regular worker in the chemical factory workshop, wearing a mask all day and looking dust-covered and exhausted. When Samuel's mother found out, she almost laughed her teeth out. I knew it. What could she accomplish? Last life, she benefited from your success. But now she's throwing it all away. The chemical factory is hard work. Just wait. She won't last 3 months before she's crying and begging us to marry her. She was wrong. I stayed at the chemical factory for 2 years, working hard while studying for my master's degree. I had majored in chemical engineering in university, and since I worked diligently and always strived to do my best, I was regularly recognized as an outstanding worker. After I got into graduate school, the factory decided to sponsor me for further education. Coincidentally, Samuel also entered graduate school, and we crossed paths once again on campus. Samuel was incredibly surprised. Diana, what are you doing here? Are you here to find me? You knew I was studying here? Samuel looked me up and down, puffing out his chest with a hint of pride. Last life, the school I attended was nowhere near as good as Peking University. Not just anyone can come here. After I finish my master's, I plan to stay here to teach. I'll go further than I did in my past life. What about you? Can't stand working at the factory anymore? Samuel curled the corner of his mouth. I told you, if you could last 2 years, you must be tough. The lotus pond was surrounded by many tall, lush trees, creating a green canopy above Samuel's head. The dappled branches and leaves cast intertwined shadows above his strong brow bones. Samuel smiled, slowly extending his hand toward me. I've been waiting for you these 2 years. As long as you admit your mistake, my mom will. The bell rang, and I quickly pushed him aside. Class is starting. Excuse me. Behind me. I left Samuel stunned, his expression frozen in shock. Chapter 17. Samuel finally accepted reality and admitted that I was also a graduate student at Peking University. During the annual New Student Conference, I was selected as a representative and went up to speak. Under the spotlight, for the first time, it was me standing on stage while he sat in the audience, squinting his eyes, looking at me with a gaze full of confusion and disbelief. For 2 lifetimes, he finally saw me, no longer treating me as an accessory, no longer looking down on me, but as an equal, even with a slight sense of looking up at me from below. Samuel was quite moved. Diana, I think I understand what you want now. You've always been a strong-willed person. I shouldn't have said that about you. When I said you were stupid, I actually liked you in my heart. Now, I admit, you're not stupid at all. Your graduate school exam scores are way higher than mine. You're impressive. I admit you're smart. Is that enough? Your efforts these past few years, wasn't it to prove that to me? I hugged my books and walked past him. Samuel, you don't understand. I didn't do this for you to see. This isn't enough. Not nearly enough. I want the whole world to see me. Samuel froze in place. After a moment, his gaze shifted to the young man at the entrance of the library, full of vigor, and he suddenly realized, "You lied to me. I knew it. You're after Logan, right?" Logan was 8 years younger than me. In my past life, he joined the Chinese Academy of Sciences at a young age, achieving far more than Samuel ever did. I saw him on the news, and I even forgot about the tea I was holding, spilling hot water on Samuel's hand. The Chinese Academy of Sciences Chemistry Institute. It was the pinnacle of achievement for any chemist. I truly envied him. Samuel thought I was looking at Logan, and he was furious, hopping mad. "How old are you? And you're still acting like this? Looking at a young man like that?" Now, decades of speculation were confirmed. Samuel's face turned pale, his lips trembling with rage. "You've been thinking about him all this time? You're just you." Chapter 18. Logan was very fortunate. During the turbulent years, he was still in middle school, with classes suspended, free to roam the streets and play. He didn't suffer like we did, wasting away in the countryside for so many years. He was also younger than us when he started graduate school. Still in the prime of youth, we were in the same cohort, and whenever he saw me, he always respectfully called me senior sister. "Senior sister, I've saved you a seat. Are we studying until 9 again today? Shall I go get you dinner?" Samuel rushed over and twisted Logan's collar. "Diana is my wife. You little gigolo. You'd better not even think about it." Logan didn't back down and punched Samuel right in the nose. "Who's the gigolo? You're the little gigolo. Are you out of your mind?" The two of them started fighting. Naturally, they both got scolded, but since they admitted their mistakes so well, they were let off with no punishment. Logan also found out about the time Samuel and I spent in the countryside. He was very dismissive of it. Such a petty man. A guy like that should be ditched. I saw it as just a small, ordinary incident, but Samuel was deeply hurt by it and nearly fell into despair. I had told him many times that I wasn't interested in him, that I didn't want to marry him. He never took me seriously. Once Logan appeared, Samuel suddenly believed it. Perhaps in his mind, the only person who could defeat a man was another man. Samuel completely broke down, his eyes red as he stopped me under the dormitory building. "Diana." His voice was choked, and he could barely speak through his tears. 50 years. 50 years of marriage. Are you telling me you really don't care about me at all? Didn't we have a happy life? How could you fall in love with someone else? How could you? I was the professor, and I never looked down on you for being stupid or incapable. Why is it that you're the one who left me? His lofty pride was shattered, unable to bear the weight. I just looked at him calmly. "I'm not stupid, and I'm not incapable. You think I'm stupid because, in the name of love, you confined me to fields I'm not good at, forcing me to do things I'm not skilled at, serving your entire family for 50 years. Who was happy? You were. Not me." Samuel clenched his fists. "You're not happy? After all these years? How have I wronged you? I never let you go hungry. I never deprived you of food or clothes. Did I? How laughable. Originally, I could have had a job. No matter who I married, I wouldn't have gone hungry. The things I already had, how did he think they were his gifts to me?" Chapter 19. We couldn't even have a civil conversation. I couldn't be bothered to deal with Samuel anymore. I went back to my dorm and went to bed early. My roommate told me that he had been standing downstairs for most of the night, asking me to go talk to him. "The wind's so strong outside. Don't let him catch a cold. Better let the wind blow some sense into that stubborn head of his." It wasn't until the campus security came to patrol that they forced Samuel to leave. The next day, Samuel didn't show up, but his mother did. Throwing a tantrum, she said that Samuel had wasted so many years for me, and now that he was 30, if I didn't marry him, I'd be cutting off the Song family's lineage. "If you want to have kids, go find someone else. The Song family's descendants have nothing to do with me." Seeing my cold and firm attitude, Samuel's mother burst into tears. "I misjudged you. I thought you were an honest person. Turns out you've always looked down on Samuel. You have no talent, and yet your ambitions are sky high. I'll just watch. Let's see who would want you." An old spinster. You leave our Samuel, and no one will want you. Just as she finished speaking, Logan's head appeared at the door. Diana, would you do me the honor of watching a movie with me tonight? Samuel's mother froze, her throat sputtering for a long time before she slammed her leg in frustration. You're that gigolo, aren't you? You're trying to break them apart. You, Logan snorted. Mind your language. I just beat up Samuel yesterday. Don't make me take it out on you too. I don't have some rule about not hitting women. Logan had a bit of a rebellious edge when he was younger. He was taller than Samuel by half a head, wearing a green military uniform, sleeves rolled up to his shoulders, showing off his well-defined muscles. Samuel's mother shrank back. Young man, don't let her deceive you. She's 30 this year, been married, and had 2 kids. Logan, so what? I like older women. Mom, stop making trouble. Samuel, pale-faced, staggered in and dragged his mother away. He shot a quick glance at me, tears falling from his eyes. Diana, if you want to choose him, I'll let you. As the mother and son left, I helplessly turned to look at Logan. What are you stirring up trouble for? Are you doing this to piss off Samuel on purpose? Logan raised his chin. Yep, I'm doing it to piss him off. I paused for a moment, feeling the need to explain. I haven't had children. Logan's eyes brightened, and a smile gradually spread across his face. I don't care, Diana. I interrupted him. I think there's something wrong with that paper you wrote. I understood what Logan meant, but I didn't have the time or energy to indulge in romance right now. Logan lowered his gaze in disappointment. All right, we'll talk about it later. Chapter 20. Half disappointment, half revenge. After that, Samuel quickly married a city girl. She came from a good family and was beautiful. A year passed, and they had a lovely son. Samuel regained some vitality, deliberately holding his son in front of me, showing off. Diana, when are you and Logan getting married? At that time, I was already pursuing my PhD. However, Samuel hadn't kept pace with the rhythm of the past life. The city girl had a respectable job and wasn't willing to give up her golden job for the child. She still worked her usual hours, leaving the baby entirely with Samuel's mother. Samuel's mother's headache returned, and the whole family was in chaos, with no one else to help. Samuel had no choice but to balance work and taking care of the child, leaving him with no extra time for studying. My PhD progress was delayed. Samuel didn't really mind. A delay of 2 or 3 years wouldn't matter. After he graduated, he smoothly stayed at the university, and now he was a lecturer in Beijing, in a position far better than his previous life. At worst, he would just walk the same path as before. He could afford to wait. What he didn't realize was how the small, mundane details of family life could drag a person into a whirlpool. At that time, he was still full of enthusiasm, thinking of himself as a winner. You're not getting any younger. You should push him. If you wait a few more years, you won't even be able to have kids. I buried myself in my notes. He went out to watch a movie with someone. I have nothing to do with Logan. Samuel was stunned. What? You're not together? No. Logan told me before. He said yes. I rejected him. Right now, I'm focused on my studies. I don't have time to think about anything else. Samuel widened his eyes, his face full of confusion. No, Diana, I really don't understand you. What's going on? You're a woman, and you don't want a family, don't want children, and don't even want a lover? No one will love you. How lonely and desolate a life that will be. Chapter 21. I paused, looking at him seriously. Does a woman really need love? From childhood, all the movies, novels, literature, and society's atmosphere have been instilling this idea into women. Little girls grow up yearning for their Prince Charming. Little boys, on the other hand, dream of adventures, the stars, and the vast seas. But why? For women, is love really that important? Without love, does a woman lack coherence, independence, and a complete core? Is it impossible for one to live a peaceful and happy life on their own? I married for love. I loved Samuel my entire life. To be fair, Samuel loved me too, but did I find happiness? His love meant I should bear his children, take care of the household, leave my familiar family behind to join a completely foreign one, smooth out my edges, and bear the scars to integrate into their world. Compared to most women, my life was already pretty good, but I still wasn't happy. Those who benefit from the system are the ones who repeatedly promote it, urging you to make choices that are advantageous to them. Why should I follow these rules? Samuel froze for a moment before showing the familiar sneer. Don't want love? What should a woman want then? Power, status, money, and fame. These are what women have been most lacking for thousands of years. I sneered in return. Forget it. You wouldn't understand. I'm going to study abroad for a few years. After that, we probably won't meet again. I walked away. Samuel was still holding the child, staring blankly, frozen in place. Chapter 22. I returned after completing my studies. In 2 years, I solved a major technical problem and won a national award. That same year, I joined the Chinese Academy of Sciences and earned a string of international honors. At that time, I was just over 41, a woman's prime. But Samuel had been worn down into nothing. He was exhausted from raising 2 sons and had long abandoned the thought of continuing his studies. He still worked as a lecturer, but he frequently made mistakes. The school leaders called him in for talks several times, warning him that if he kept misguiding students, they'd transfer him to a less demanding office job. When he was being reprimanded and couldn't hold his head up, the office suddenly became noisy. The office director rushed out with a smile, enthusiastically shaking my hand. Professor Diana. Oh, didn't we agree that I would send someone to pick you up at the airport at 4? Why did you come yourself? It's fine. It's easier for me to drive. I smiled politely, then turned around and saw Samuel, pale-faced, shrinking his shoulders, desperately trying to disappear. Mr. Song is here too. The director was surprised. You two know each other? I nodded. Yes. We go way back. The director smiled. I see. Mr. Song. Then let's have a simple dinner tonight. We need to welcome Professor Diana, starting this year. She's the school's honorary professor. Samuel's eyes flashed with shock. His lips trembled as he stared at me, unable to say a word for a long time. After a while, he awkwardly lowered his head. No need. I still have to pick up the kids from school later. Let's do it another day. Another day. Samuel stumbled out of the office. The director smirked behind him. Can't even stand on his own feet. A grown man, dragged down like that by family matters. I'm not saying his wife is. Well, it's true. She's quite good. I know her. She's a nice person and very ambitious with her work. A woman being weighed down by family, well, that's just how it goes. When these trivial matters are placed on a man, everyone will feel sorry for him and blame the woman. But what did she do wrong? She simply did what every man would do. The director awkwardly laughed in agreement. Well, if even Professor Diana approves, then it must really be something. Haha. Chapter 23. The day I won the Nobel Prize. The school held a grand press conference. I sat on the stage. Samuel's family sat in the audience below. Samuel's mother glared at me with resentment. What's so great about her? She's at that age, and no man wants her. Samuel's 2 sons retorted. Grandma, you're crazy. With her level, what kind of man would be worthy of her? Samuel's mother was fuming. What level? I used to have her wash the dishes and clothes, and she didn't dare say a word. She wouldn't move left or right. You're senile. Grandma. Dad, take her to the hospital for a checkup. Samuel's mother was furious. Is this how you talk about your grandma? All because of your mother. You're useless at studying. You can't even get into a normal high school. My other grandchildren graduated from top universities. But you two are worthless. Samuel's wife wasn't having any of it and immediately fought back. How did I teach them badly? Mom, you should have some conscience. When you had a stroke a few years ago, wasn't it my mom who took care of you? You're so ungrateful. It looked like they were about to get into a fight again. The people in the audience started looking over, and security also started heading in their direction. Samuel's face turned red with embarrassment. Stop yelling. This is a formal event. If you keep it up, I'll have you thrown out. Finally, it quieted down. Samuel lifted his head. looking at me under the spotlight, with tears faintly glimmering in his eyes. When it was time for the audience to ask questions, Samuel couldn't wait to stand up and grab the microphone. Professor Diana, I want to ask you. Samuel's gaze swept over his two sons, and with a hint of satisfaction, he asked me, do you feel your life is complete? Not getting married in this life, not having children to carry on your lineage, aren't you really regretful? I looked up and saw the bright red banner hanging above the hall. Warm congratulations to Scientist Diana for winning the Nobel Prize. Scientist Diana. I smiled faintly. Yes, I don't have my own children, but I have them. I extended my hand to point toward the audience. Most of them are students of my field. They read my books, study my papers, and listen to my lectures. They may not look like me, but they think like me. I don't have children to pass on my genes, but I have students to carry on my ideas. Through the long river of time, genes may fade, but brilliant civilizations endure forever. My life has been very complete. Thunderous applause filled the hall. It continued for a long time. Extra 1. I was walking out of the hotel with my young boyfriend when we unexpectedly ran into Samuel. Samuel froze for a few seconds, his eyes filled with disbelief. You said you didn't need love. I shrugged. Not having a man in my eyes doesn't mean I don't have one by my side. Reaching the peak of my career, I finally relaxed. Enjoying life a little is nothing to be ashamed of. I'm just an ordinary person, with mundane, worldly desires. Just because I've achieved great success in my career doesn't mean I should be a saint. The path of a successful woman is already difficult enough. Don't force moral labels on her. A look of being deceived flashed across Samuel's face. How can you? You're corrupting morals. You. Before he could finish, several security guards rushed over nervously. Professor Diana, are you okay? Who is this person? Should we get rid of him? I coldly nodded. A crazy fan. Samuel was quickly dragged away. His thoughts were laughable. When a man reaches the peak of power, becomes an emperor with a harem of thousands, no one ever criticizes him for corrupting morals. But why can't a woman do the same? The old societal restrictions on women, the new era will surely break them. I look forward to the day when everyone will take this for granted. Extra 2. When I was invited to give a lecture at a university, I encountered a very enthusiastic student. Her name was Ellie. She excitedly waved her arms, pushed through the crowd, and came up to me, asking me to sign her notebook. Professor Diana, you have such a great presence. I was completely captivated by your lecture. You speak so well. Ellie's face turned red as she boldly made a joke. If you were a man, I'd marry you. The young girl's eyes sparkled, filled with admiration and longing. I took her notebook and smiled, shaking my head. Don't marry me. Become me. The girl's admiration for strength is also a longing for power and success. But the societal conditioning that's been with her from childhood makes her want to be someone bathed in moonlight. She's never considered that when the light shines on you, yes, you get seen, but when the light moves away, you have nothing. You should become the moon. Ellie froze, staring blankly at the name on the notebook. Diana,